Once upon a time, there lived a poor widow, and she had a son, Jack, and a cow, Belyanka. The cow gave milk every morning, and the mother and son sold it in the bazaar, and that was how they lived. But once Belyanka did not give milk, and they did not have food. Mom decided to sell the cow and open a shop with the proceeds. Jack took the rein in his hands and led the cow to the market. No sooner had he arrived than he met some wonderful old man. He said he would like to trade Jack's cow for beans. And with these words, he took out a handful of some strange beans from his pocket. The old man said these beans are magical. They need to be planted in the evening, and by morning they will grow to the very sky. Jack became very interested and agreed. The boy came home early. Mother was very angry that he gave the dairy cow in the whole neighborhood for a handful of some nasty beans. But Jack remembered the old man's words and decided that there was nothing to do, and planted beans in the yard. He went up to his attic sad, and fell asleep. In the morning, Jack woke up and saw something like a large tree in the yard. And this, it turns out, his beans sprouted, and the huge stem continued to grow upward until it grew to the sky. Jack jumped onto the stem and climbed up like a ladder. He climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed until, at last, he reached the sky. There he saw a long and wide road that led him to a huge castle. Jack went to his gate and knocked. The gate opened, and a tall woman stood on the threshold. Stuttering with fear, the boy asked for something for breakfast. The giantess let him in, but warned him not to catch the eye of her husband, because he is a cannibal. She took Jack to the kitchen. But before he had time to eat even half of his breakfast, suddenly the whole house shook from someone's steps. The boy was not taken aback and instantly jumped into the furnace. And at that very moment, the cannibal entered the room. Well, he was as big as a mountain. The cannibal took out 2 bags of gold from a huge chest and sat down to count the coins. He counted and counted, finally began to nod off, and began to snore. Then Jack quietly climbed out of the oven, crept past the cannibal, grabbed 1 bag of gold, and rushed to the beanstalk. He threw the bag down, and he began to go down the stem lower and lower, until, finally, he found himself at his house. Jack told his mother everything that had happened to him, and handed her a bag of gold. They began to live on the money that was in the bag. But eventually the sack was empty and Jack decided to try his luck one more time at the top of the beanstalk. One fine morning, he got up early and climbed a beanstalk. The man-eater's wife stood at the threshold of the huge castle. She said that she would not let him in, because the last time her husband had lost a bag of gold. But all the same, she took pity on the poor boy, and let him into the castle. Suddenly the footsteps of a giant were heard, and Jack again hid in the furnace. The cannibal entered and told his wife to bring the hen that lays the golden eggs. The giantess brought it, and the ogre ordered the chicken to lay, and she laid the golden egg. The pleased giant began nodding and snoring. Then Jack climbed out of the oven, grabbed the golden chicken, and rushed to the beanstalk. The boy returned home. He showed his mother a wonderful chicken, and they began to live selling golden eggs. But soon it seemed to Jack that this was not enough. And he again decided to try his luck at the top of the beanstalk. This time the boy climbed into the castle through the window. He jumped into a copper cauldron and hid. The cannibal and his wife entered the room. The giant smelled the boy, and they rushed to look for him in the oven. But he was not there. They searched every nook and cranny, but they didn't think to look into the copper cauldron. Desperate to search, the ogre ordered his wife to bring a golden harp and put it on the table. Under her beautiful sounds, the cannibal snored. Then Jack quietly climbed out of the cauldron, grabbed the golden harp and rushed to the door. But the harp played loudly and woke the cannibal. Jack ran at breakneck speed, leaping onto a beanstalk, and the giant in pursuit. Jack went down to his house and yelled at his mother to carry the axe. The mother ran out with an axe in her hands. The boy grabbed the axe and began to chop the beanstalk. The ogre felt the stem swing violently and stopped. Then Jack struck again with an axe and cut the beanstalk. It swayed and collapsed, and the ogre fell to the ground and crashed. From that day on, Jack and his mother never knew poverty again. But the boy was very sorry that, because of their greed, they almost paid with their lives. He promised that he would never steal again, and would work hard for the good of the family. Once upon a time there was a prince in a distant land. It's time for him to get married. The king wanted his son to marry a real princess. The queen wished her son not just the daughter of the king and queen, but that she be gentle, intelligent, and graceful. And he himself wanted to follow the dictates of his heart. The prince went in search of the bride. After a few days of travel, he reached the nearest kingdom. The local king liked the polite and handsome prince.
Nice.
And he took him to his daughter.
Okay.
The princess was lovely. But after talking to her, the prince realized that she was very stupid, and there was nothing to even talk about with her. He apologized, said goodbye, and continued on his way. In the next kingdom, the king and queen were fascinated by the young prince, and immediately invited him to meet their daughter. They took him to the dining room, where the princess was dining. The young man greeted, but the girl did not even look at him. She was very passionate about her dinner. The prince thought the princess didn't care about him. Saying goodbye, he left this kingdom too. The prince traveled all over the world to find his beloved. After much trying, he lost all hope of finding a suitable bride. The king and queen were very concerned about this. Still, they were glad their son hadn't married the wrong girl. One night, a violent storm began. It rained like a bucket, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The prince could not sleep, watching the flashes of lightning and continuing to dream of his princess. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When the prince opened, a young girl was standing on the threshold. She was shaking violently as she was soaked all over in the rain. The poor girl was alone in the midst of all this raging bad weather, but even in the rain she seemed very sweet. She said that she was lost in the woods and asked to warm up inside the house. The prince took pity on the poor girl and led her into the house. He led her into the living room and sat her in front of the fireplace. The girl said that she is a princess from a distant kingdom. They were attacked and her parents sent her out of the castle with 2 soldiers. But during the storm, they were lost, and the princess was left alone. It was hard for the queen to believe this, but she could not kick the girl out in such weather. When the prince entered the living room, she was already dressed in a dry and clean dress that the queen had given. She looked dazzling now. The prince could not believe his eyes. He fell in love. But at the behest of his father, he could not marry a girl if she is not a real princess. The queen realized that the prince had fallen in love. She reassured him and said that she knew how to find out if their guest was telling the truth or not. The queen went to the guest room, prepared for the young girl, and placed a small dry pea under her mattress. And on top, she ordered to put 6 more mattresses. Soon the girl went to sleep in her room. The next morning, everyone eagerly awaited the awakening of the princess. And when she woke up, the queen asked how she slept that night. The girl replied that she was very grateful for the night, and that she would sleep much worse outside in the rain. Despite this, she slept very badly and did not get enough sleep. And now her back hurts, as if she was sleeping on a stone. This was the answer the queen had been waiting for. She knew that only a princess could feel the pea hidden under the 7 mattresses. Hearing this and learning that the girl was a real princess, the prince told the king that he wanted to marry her. The king and queen happily blessed the marriage of their son and princess. The prince asked the girl to stay in the palace until the war in her kingdom was over. And he himself sent his troops to help save her country. They soon got married and lived happily ever after.